Hello, everyone. Welcome to ForeFlight Fundamentals. We're super excited to be giving these presentations this week as part of EAA's Spirit of Aviation Week. My name is Ryan McBride. I am the lead product designer at ForeFlight. So my team is responsible for making the features within ForeFlight easy to use, easy to understand. Before we begin today, I wanted to go over just a few housekeeping items. We're using GoToWebinar today, and one of the nice features of GoToWebinar is it allows audience members to ask questions. So we have a full staff of ForeFlight pilot support team specialists on the webcast along with you all today. And they're going to be fielding questions, and you can ask a question using the question area at the bottom of the screen. If you ask any questions throughout the presentation, at the end, I'll be turning to our pilot support team and they'll be reading out some of the most common questions, and I'm happy to answer those at the end. If you find yourself having any sort of audio problems, we generally recommend joining from a computer, not a mobile device. And I want to remind everyone that if there's something you missed, or maybe you had to tune out and then tune back in later, this session is being recorded. So you'll be able to review this on your own time at foreflight.com/onfrequency. So before we begin, just a little bit about ForeFlight for those who aren't as familiar with the company. ForeFlight was founded in 2007. It was founded by Tyson Wise, the CEO, and Jason Miller, the CTO. Tyson and Jason actually met online. They were both pilots. And 2007 was an important year. It was the year that the iPhone was introduced by Apple. And Tyson and Jason sort of immediately saw the potential that the iPhone might have to improve pilots' lives, frankly. And so they got together and started working on some different ideas on how they might be able to use the iPhone for aviation purposes. And the first version of ForeFlight actually wasn't even an application, it was a website, just a mobile optimized website. And you could go to the website and you could enter a airport code and it would spit out a METAR. That was sort of version 1. And obviously the product has come a long way since then. We pride ourselves on building what we believe are the most elegant, high-performing apps in aviation. We also pride ourselves on what we call our fanatical pilot support team. Everyone on the support team at ForeFlight is a pilot. Most are instrument rated, CFI, CFII, a huge amount of experience on our support team, and they're available 24/7 over email if you have any questions about the product. I'm going to give you some information at the end of the presentation on how best to contact our support team. We're proud to say we've been the #1 selling aviation app in the world since 2010. So let's talk about the iPad. Whether you're looking to purchase your first iPad to run ForeFlight, or maybe you've had an iPad for a while and you're looking to upgrade, there's a lot of different iPad options out there. And I want to give you kind of the overview and then the short advice that we recommend. So ForeFlight runs exactly the same on every screen size of iPad, whether it's the iPad mini on the small size or all the way up to the 12.9-inch iPad Pro on the largest size. The screen size you choose is totally up to you. So for example, most of the flying I do is in an R44 and a Cessna 172, and I've found that the iPad mini is the right size for those aircraft. So that's what I use. But if you are flying something a little larger, maybe a 182, maybe a Cirrus, something like that, you might consider upgrading to a little bit larger screen size, like the 9.7 or the 10.5. We have folks who are flying large jet aircraft or even airliners that use the iPad Pros, the 11 and the 12.9-inch. But the screen size is totally up to you. Now, every iPad comes in different storage sizes. I think they start now at 64, maybe 128, and they go way up from there. We recommend, as of 2020, we recommend the 256 gigabyte size. Generally, if you have the 256 gigabyte size, you can download everything ForeFlight has to offer, plus have plenty of room for other things, other applications, photos, videos, what have you. And so that's normally what we recommend. And then every iPad also comes in 2 different variants, Wi-Fi only and Wi-Fi plus cellular. The Wi-Fi only model allows you to connect to Wi-Fi if you have a Wi-Fi signal nearby, and that lets you get an internet connection to download charts and weather and things like that. We recommend getting the Wi-Fi plus cellular model. The reason we recommend that is that only the cellular version of every iPad has an internal GPS. So when Apple manufactures the devices, the GPS chip and the cellular connectivity chip are sort of part of the same component. And so if you want to be able to see your aircraft position on your iPad without having to connect some sort of external GPS source, the Wi-Fi plus cellular model is the best option. Now, it's worth noting that you don't have to sign up for cellular service in order to benefit from this, right? So If you only want to see your GPS position internal, you don't want to worry about anything external to do that. Just get the cellular model. You don't have to sign up for cellular service, and it'll work just fine. Of course, you can sign up for cellular service if you want, and then you'll have internet connectivity generally on the ground wherever you are. There's more information, by the way, on ForeFlight.com/buying guide if you have more questions about that. So let's talk about ForeFlight Mobile. ForeFlight Mobile is what we call an integrated flight app. It's really meant to be an all-in-one, purpose-built product for all the information that a pilot might need. So that means things like airport information, maps and charts, plates, lots of different types of procedures are built in. Document management, so you can download documents from official sources like the FAA or Nav Canada or Jeppesen, but you can also upload your own documents too and keep them with you on your iPad. It has a built-in logbook that will automatically record your flights for you. It has a full suite of incredibly powerful flight planning tools, a huge library of international weather imagery, the ability to file flight plans, VFR and IFR flight plans, and get weather briefings globally. A feature we call Scratchpad, which allows you to take notes right on your iPad screen with a stylus or with your finger. And then a huge amount of features that improve your situational awareness when you're planning and when you're flying. It's really incredible, how far technology has come. When I was a private pilot student, this was sort of what my desk looked like, right? All these different things. And now, we've really sort of consolidated all of these different publications into one application, right? So much simpler, much more portable, and I think a hugely important transition for the industry, and something we're really proud of. So let's talk about getting around the app. When you download ForeFlight from the App Store for the first time and open it up, it will look like this. This is the airport view. It's the default view for new installations of ForeFlight Mobile. I want to highlight one specific area at the bottom of the screen here. This is what we call the tab bar. We zoom in on that so we can get a better look. Notice there's a bunch of buttons that move left to right along this tab bar. We call these buttons individually tabs. And you'll notice that we're on the airports tab right now. It's highlighted, and that's how we know what we're looking at. But you can very easily click on any other tab, like for example, Scratchpads, just with one tap, and it'll switch to that area of the application. There's a special tab in the latest version of ForeFlight Mobile. It's the More tab. And when you tap on this, a little menu will slide out from the right-hand side of the screen. And this allows you to access different options in the application. So for example, at the top of the view there, you can see downloads. That allows you to access your chart downloads, and we'll get into how to do that later on in the presentation. There's also a wide variety of different settings you can configure to kind of tweak ForeFlight to behave just like you want, and that's accessible at the top as well. And then a variety of other different functional areas of the app here are listed under the Views section. I want to highlight one specific action that I think you might find useful. Edit tab order. In the latest version of ForeFlight, you can actually customize what tabs show up at the bottom of the screen. So for example, if you are someone who flies a lot and you just are not using the Imagery tab in flight, you'd rather have something else on there like checklist, you can do that now in the latest version. So if you tap on Edit Tab Order, you'll get a view that looks like this. And you get these little draggers next to each of the tab options. And you can kind of drag them up and down in the order that you want. And the topmost tabs will be the ones that flow into the tab bar at the bottom. So if I tap Save, the order that I set in this list is then reflected at the bottom of the screen. Ones that don't fit, those will just flow back into the menu here. So that's one great new feature of the latest version. I also want to highlight that everything we're going over right now, that we will go over in this presentation, as of the latest version of ForeFlight Mobile, virtually all of these iPad features are available on iPhone as well. For a long time, the iPad and the iPhone applications were slightly different, and we were really excited to get a new version out very recently that sort of consolidates the functionality and the overall user experience so you can very seamlessly transition between your devices. Okay, so I want to work left to right across those tabs at the bottom today, going through each of the core areas of the application. And as I mentioned, the airports view is the default view when you first install ForeFlight Mobile, and we're on the airports tab right now. So let's say I wanted to pull up specific airport information for a given airport. In order, I can use the search bar at the top, and I can tap on that search bar, and I can start entering the airport that I want. So for example, I could enter the airport identifier. In this case, I'm looking for Oshkosh, so I would type KOSH, and you can see that Oshkosh is the first result there. But I want to point out that the search here is pretty smart, right? So you'll notice that it's recommending other things besides just airports. It's recommending different procedures for Oshkosh. It's recommending different navigational aids that might match my search criteria. If you don't know the ICAO code for the airport, you can enter the name of the airport or the city that the airport is in, and ForeFlight will basically search our database and propose to you what it thinks is the best result. So there's a lot of really useful functionality built just into this search field. But anyway, I've typed KOSH, and I'll hit enter on my keyboard, and the airport view is now refreshed with the airport that I entered. And I'll highlight a couple different areas of this airport view. Up at the top of the screen is a summary section. This is sort of an overview of the airport, different primary pieces of information you might want to know about this airport. And then at the bottom, you can see there's a series of 5 tabs that run across the middle of the screen. And for each of these tabs, you can tap on them and dive deeper into information about this airport. So let's zoom in to the top there, to that summary screen. And I want to highlight a couple different useful areas. You can see we have a thumbnail diagram in the top left, just giving you a quick visual representation of the airport. You can tap on that thumbnail diagram to enlarge it. We have the ICAO code, the name of the airport, the city, state, and country it's in, the latitude and longitude of the airport, sunrise and sunset times indicated by the rising and setting sun icons there. We can also see a summary of the latest weather. So based on the report from this airport, we'll let you know if it's VFR, marginal VFR, IFR, or low IFR, and each of those conditions are color coded. So VFR is going to be green, marginal is blue, IFR is red, low IFR is magenta. Then we'll give you a summary of what the latest wind speed and direction is, visibility, and sky conditions. Underneath that, the field elevation and then pattern altitude. You'll see that little arrow next to pattern altitude. If there are different published pattern altitudes for different types of aircraft, you can tap on that, see that information. Different types of fuel and procedures that are available. And then towards the right side of the screen, we can see for this airport, like ATIS, ground tower, approach departure, that sort of thing. If I move down to the bottom of the screen, we have, again, these 5 tabs that move across the center of the screen. And you'll notice as I move through these tabs that they're all oriented in the same way. They all have 2 columns within them. So we're looking at the info tab right now. The left column is all the different categories, types of information we can view. And then the right column is all the information within the category we've selected. So right now we're looking at frequencies. This first section here under info is all the frequencies, and I can tap on a category to get the frequencies that match. So for example, if I was looking up tower frequencies for Oshkosh, I could tap on the tower option, then I would see any available tower frequencies on the right, as well as operating hours for the tower if applicable. Underneath frequencies on the left-hand side, there's also the chart supplement. So you can pull up the airport facility directory out of the chart supplement just by tapping on it, and it opens it up in full screen like that. A few more options down there under nearby airports. You can see what's nearby, what the surface conditions are at those airports, and then a bunch of details, all the stuff you'd expect to find in the chart supplement, like contact information, operating hours, that sort of thing. The next tab over is weather, so I'll tap on that. Again, we have 2 columns, right? Categories on the left and the specific information on the right. So looking at the METAR, and you'll notice on the right-hand side here that we have the raw METAR as it's published, and it's colored green because based on that report, ForeFlight knows that this is a VFR flight category. Underneath that green text is translated. So the application actually looks at all the different components of a METAR and translates them out line by line. You'll notice up in the top right corner to the right of where it says VFR, it says 29 minutes ago. That's when that report was made. So you can see how recent the report is. And then underneath the translation is, again, nearby weather. So you can see what surface conditions are like around that airport. Another weather product in this view is the TAF, and I can tap on TAF and I can see it here. If the airport does not have a TAF, we will show you the closest one, right? So in this case, we're looking at a TAF that you can see in orange there is 16 nautical miles north of Oshkosh. Just like the the METAR, we're going to color code each of the time blocks of the TAF based on what flight category is forecast to be in effect at that time. In this case, it looks like it was VFR conditions that were forecast into the future. And then for each of those time blocks below the raw TAF, we translate them as well. You'll notice also underneath the raw TAF there, it says View Forecast Discussion. This is a feature that's been in ForeFlight for a while, but we moved it in the latest version. The forecast discussion is sort of, I think of it as like a blog post. So whenever the meteorologist is writing their TAF, they're writing in plain language, sort of the rationale for why they issued that forecast. So it's sort of related to the TAF, and that's why we've moved it section. Oh, I should mention, there's a lot more different weather products that are available in ForeFlight Mobile. We're not going to get into all of them today, but I'll give you more information at the end of the presentation on how to do a really deep dive on all the weather that's available on the airport view. The next tab over is Runway. So again, all the runway information you'd expect to find in the chart supplement. You can tap on runways along the left-hand side to get information about them. You'll notice we highlight some things for each runway, right? So we highlight the dimensions of the runway, the surface type for the runway, and then based on the latest METAR, what the headwind, tailwind, and crosswind components are for each of those runways. And you can tap on each of them to dive deeper into more information like lighting, if there's any displaced thresholds, that sort of thing. The Procedures tab, really useful. This is one that I think most customers are using a lot. When you go to the Procedure tab, you can browse different categories of procedures at a given airport. So in this case at Oshkosh, airport departure procedures, arrival procedures, and approaches. And you can tap on a procedure to open it up in full screen, just like we did for the AFD earlier. You'll notice there's a little map button here. This is a feature that's available to Pro Plus subscribers. If you tap on the map button instead of the name of the procedure, if you just tap on the map portion on the side, this will actually visualize that procedure on top of your map. We call this a geo-referenced procedure, and it's available to Pro Plus customers. And I'll show you a bit later on in the presentation why that's really useful. There's also a Nodem section, so you can browse node category, airport, obstacle, GFR, and RT Nodems. For each of the Nodems, we're going to give you the raw Nodem, and then you'll notice we highlight in red parts that are really important. So for example, if something is out of service or a taxiway or runway is closed, and then we also parse out the effective and the expiration and duration times for each of those Nodems. There's one more view on the airport's view that I want to touch on before we move on. That's the FBOs button in the top right-hand corner of the screen. If you tap on FBOs, you'll see all of the businesses that are available at this airport. So that can be sort of just true FBOs that offer fuel and things like that, or maintenance services, if there's any flying clubs or aircraft rental services available. And you can tap on each of these businesses to get more information about them, how to contact them, what their hours are, if they offer fuel, what their fuel prices are, that sort of thing. Something that's available to performance customers is the 3D view. And there's a variety of different 3D features in the application, all of which are available to Performance Plus customers. But on the airport view, if you're a performance customer, you can tap the 3D view button. It will open up an interactive 3D view of this airport. It's rendered true to life with actual 3D terrain. You can zoom around. If you tap on any of the the runway names that are in the top right there, it'll actually orient you on final, like if you were to fly into that airport. Okay, let's talk about maps. So the maps view is probably the most frequently used view within ForeFlight Mobile, and it's definitely the most feature-packed view. The maps view is one to the right from airports along the bottom of the screen on the tab bar. And when you tap on maps, by default, you'll see something that looks like this. So everything we do in the maps view, whether it's looking at weather or planning a flight or viewing charts, everything is projected onto a 3D representation of the globe. And we can customize what this globe looks like by using a button we call the layer selector. This is up in the top left-hand corner. And when I tap on the layer selector, it opens up a menu, and the menu looks like this. Your menu may not have this many options in it. The number of options that you have will depend on the type of subscription you have and the geographic region you're subscribed to. So if yours doesn't look exactly like this, don't worry. It's just, there's lots of different variations of what this could look like based on your subscription. But there's two columns within this menu. There's the left column, And these are charts. So this is how you might, for example, look at a VFR chart. If I wanted to look at a VFR sectional on my map, I would select VFR sectional. And now my map is replaced with VFR sectionals. And you'll notice we've stitched them all together, right? So normally these are printed or published by the FAA as individual charts. And we have a GIS team at ForeFlight that goes through and links them all up in a seamless way that makes it really easy to use on an EFB like ForeFlight. If I'm flying IFR, I might choose an IFR low chart. And you can see once I select that, the map is instantly replaced with my IFR low. There's one special chart in ForeFlight that I want to highlight. It's called the aeronautical map. When I tap on aeronautical, I'll get a view that looks like this. This is the ForeFlight global aeronautical map. It's powered by Jeppesen data. You don't have to be a Jeppesen subscriber to access it. It's built into it. It's a dynamic map, which means that as you're zooming and panning around, the map will change based on what the application thinks is most important to you. You'll notice as I zoom in, taxi diagrams are built right into the application. The zoom scale, as the zoom scale changes, the map will basically dynamically update, which is really handy. Another benefit of the dynamic map is a common problem with traditional like VFR charts or IFR is for pilots who like to fly track up, but are flying, let's say, southbound, right? So you're flying south, but you're tracking nose up with your GPS position. All your charts are upside down. It's hard to read the labels, right? The nice thing about the dynamic map is it's rendered on the fly, and so all of the labels will always be right side up, no matter which direction you're flying or which direction you're tracking. So again, that left column is charts. The right column is what we call layers. So layers are pieces of information we can put on top of our chart to better visualize whatever conditions we're interested in. So I'm just going to turn on a couple common options. So I've turned on radar, I've turned on traffic, and I've turned on flight categories. So you can see you can kind of combine different layers here to visualize things based on what you care about. Really, really useful. Tons of different options that are available here. Here's an example of what that looks like in full screen. So right now we're looking at real-time radar. We're looking at flight category. So this is all the METAR reports, and they're color-coded based on the flight category. And then I have traffic on as well. You can visualize traffic if you are in flight with an ADS-B device, or if you're on the ground and just doing some pre-flight planning. As long as you have an internet connection, you'll get live traffic in ForeFlight over the internet, which is powered by FlightAware. It's built into the application. That's one of the newer features, something we're really excited to get out to customers lately. So that's a bit about charts, a bit about layers. I'd like to talk about basic flight planning in the application. So let's say I wanted to plan a flight in the Oshkosh area. We plan flights on the map using the FPL button, FPL obviously standing for flight plan. When I tap on the FPL button at the top, I get a little menu that drops down, and there's a bunch of different areas of this menu. You'll notice that the center section there says tap here to create a route. So that's how we can start entering our route. There's a variety of other buttons that allow me to set up my aircraft, enter my performance information for my aircraft, which is how ForeFlight gives me accurate time and fuel estimates. I can also visualize different procedures, or maybe look up some recommended routes, see routes that other pilots have been filing and getting cleared for recently. At the bottom is a readout. Once I've entered my route, is a readout of the total distance, time en route, my estimated time of arrival, total fuel burn, and the average headwind or tailwind averaged across all legs of my route. And then, of course, there's a few other features here along the right-hand side. The ability to visualize my route differently in a navlog form, the ability to visualize my route as a profile, so sort of from the side to look at terrain and obstacles and that sort of thing. And that little suitcase there, you can see in the middle, that's a feature called Pack, which sort of automates how we can download information that we need for our route. And I'll get into how that Pack feature works a little bit later on. So let's start with the basics here. We're going to tap in the middle of the screen where it said tap here to create a route. And I'm going to start entering my route. And we enter our route like we would type words in a sentence, right? So if I'm typing a sentence, I type a word and then the space bar, and then another word and the space bar. We do the same thing with waypoints. So I can type KOSH with my keyboard and then the space bar. And when I do that, two things happen. You can see at the top of the screen, we have a little blue bubble around the Oshkosh Airport identifier. That's ForeFlight telling you that's a real thing. I know where that is. That's a legitimate airport identifier. And on the map in the middle of the screen, you can see we now have a little waypoint, KOSH. And so from this point, we can continue adding additional waypoints. If that bubble, that blue Oshkosh bubble, if that was red, you would get an error, and they would tell you that it doesn't know what that waypoint is. Either you mistyped a waypoint, or maybe you don't have the latest navigation database downloaded, something like that. So just make sure you don't have any red waypoints in your flight plan. So let's continue our flight down to SBM down here. So to do that, I have a couple options. I could type KSBM in my flight plan at the top of the screen, or I can actually tap on the actual airport directly on the map. So when I do that, I get an add to route window. And this is basically ForeFlight saying, okay, you tapped your finger here in this area over by SBM. There's actually a bunch of things in that area. Which of these things did you want to add to your route? And in my case, I did want Sheboygan Airport. And so I will tap on that. And when I do that, you can see it's added SBM up at the top of the screen. And it's plotted my first leg on my map. Really simple. Now, let's say that I wanted to make a stop on my way to Sheboygan. I could enter the waypoint up at the top and drag it to where I want it, or insert it where I want it. Or again, I can just directly interact with the map. We call this touch planning, and I'll show you how it works. I can actually take my finger and I can tap and drag it on the route line itself. And when I do that, I can bend the route line with my finger, and I can bend it down to whatever area I want to stop at. And when I lift my finger up off of the screen, I get that same menu again. So here's ForeFlight saying, okay, you wanted to insert a waypoint here. Here's all the things nearby where you put your finger. Which one do you want? And I can select the actual thing that I wanted, which was Fond du Lac. And so now I have two legs, Oshkosh to Fond du Lac to Sheboygan. And you can see it's correctly entered Fond du Lac up at the top in the correct spot. Really easy. So of course, beyond just planning our route with waypoints, we need to tell ForeFlight a bit more about our route, right? One of the most powerful aspects of ForeFlight is how quickly it can calculate your time and fuel burn numbers for you. But in order to get good numbers out of ForeFlight, we have to put good numbers into it. And we do that using some of these buttons along the sides of the flight plan drawer. This first button, you can see I have just an example tail number in there. That's the aircraft selection menu. If you tap on that, you can select an aircraft that you plan on flying this flight with. If this is an empty menu, then you can use that plus button up at the top of the screen to add a new aircraft. Every aircraft you add will be saved. It's synchronized across all of your devices, and so you can very quickly switch between different aircraft if that's how you fly. For each of the aircraft that you add, when you tap that plus button, ForeFlight will ask you for some basic information about it, what its tail number is, what its type code is, that sort of thing. As long as you provide basically just the tail number and the type code, in the background, the application will look up the registration information for that aircraft, and it will actually pre-fill a lot of the other information. So that's really useful. If you're trying to save some time when adding a new aircraft, make sure you enter the tail number and the type code first, and ForeFlight will help you out a little bit with the rest of it. The next button underneath the tail number is the performance button. So this is how we tell ForeFlight about how our aircraft performs. And the options that you will see in this menu will vary based on the performance, based on the subscription level you have. At the most basic level, ForeFlight allows you to create what's called a basic performance profile. This allows you to define climb, cruise, and descent numbers. So climb, cruise, and descent speeds and fuel burns that the application will then use when calculating your time and fuel estimates. For folks that are on the performance subscription, we have even more higher resolution data available, manufacturer provided performance profiles. So the same stuff you'd expect to find in the performance section of the POH is actually built into the application for performance subscribers. So you can select the performance profile you plan on using, or just add a performance profile, tell ForeFlight a little bit about how your aircraft performs in climb, cruise, and descent, and then we'll use that when it's calculating time and fuel. I want to highlight, we've been building our route here on the edit section of the flight plan window, but there's another section. It's this nav log option at the bottom. When we're flying, we get per leg information. So if you tap on that when you're flying, ForeFlight will automatically update these numbers for you, your times, your totals, your distances, that sort of thing. It'll automatically update based on your GPS position, and it will automatically transition the legs for you as you move from waypoint to waypoint. So that's a little bit about maps. I'd like to talk about the plates view in the application now. Plates is how we organize any procedures we might need for our route. So for example, taxi diagrams or approach plates, SIDS and stars, different things like that. The plates tab is one to the right of maps along the bottom of the screen. And when you open it up, you'll see a screen that looks like this by default. So it's an empty screen, and you can see there's a big button there that says Add Plate. Up at the top of the screen is a dropdown. It says My Plates. If you tap on this dropdown, you'll get a list of all of the binders that you have. A binder, you can think of a binder as just a folder. So you can create as many binders as you want, and you can add as many plates to each binder as you want. So if you're planning a multi-leg trip over many days, you might want to have multiple binders, one for each day. Maybe you fly into and out of the same sort of airports all the time. You can create binders for those airports. It's however you want to set it up. You can tap the plus to create a new binder, and you can create as many as you like. So I have my new binder here for my flight, and I'm going to add some plates to it. So I'll tap the plate button. And when I do this, I get a menu. And you can see I have a couple different options here. Up at the top of the screen, you can see it says search for airport by ID. If I wanted to pull up a plate and add a plate to this binder from a specific airport, I could enter the ICAO code for the airport and it would show me all the plates that are available, and I could select from that list. But you'll notice there's a bunch of other airports that are being listed here in this view. We're trying to make ForeFlight as intelligent as possible to save pilots as much time as possible when it comes to flight planning. So you can see that based on this route that we were just planning, ForeFlight knows I was just looking at Oshkosh on the airport's view. I was just planning a flight from Oshkosh to Fond du Lac to Sheboygan on the maps view. And so it's recommending these as suggestions, as a quick way to pull up plates for the route that I was planning. So I can tap on an airport or just enter an airport ID. And when I do that, I get all of the procedures for this airport organized by type. And I can find the plate that I want, and I can tap the plus button, and then it adds it to the binder. And again, I can add as many as I want. I can tap the edit button up at the top of the binder, and I can either reorder these by tapping and dragging them around to order them however I want, or I can remove them from the binder by tapping the red X. I want to talk about a couple other features that are available in the plates view. If you tap on a plate to open it in full screen, it'll look like this. You'll notice there is a blue box around the plan portion of this procedure, and within that blue box, I see my little airport, or my airplane position. This is another feature in Pro Plus. It's called georeferenced diagrams. And the idea is this plan portion of the procedure, because it's drawn to scale, if your aircraft is flying within any area of that blue box and you have a GPS signal, ForeFlight will actually plot out your real-time position as you're flying the approach. This is true for any chart that has a portion of it that's drawn to scale. So that's the plan portion of procedures, like instrument approach procedures. If you're a Jeppesen subscriber, that's SIDS and stars. The FAA SIDS and stars are unfortunately not drawn to scale. That is airport taxi diagrams. The profile portion of the procedure at the bottom, that is not drawn to scale, so you won't actually see your aircraft on the profile, though ForeFlight does have a profile feature on the map view itself. I want to highlight this button up at the top here. It says tap to view 3 Nodems. This is another feature we built to try to save pilots a little time. Obviously, it's super important for every pilot to review all applicable Nodems before they depart. That's something that every pilot has to do. But in order to jog your memory a little bit as you're maybe briefing an approach, we built a feature called Nodems on Plates. And the idea here is the FAA publishes all these Nodems for all the different procedures and airports and things like that. And ForeFlight, in the background, we parse through all those Nodems, and any Nodems that apply to a specific procedure, we'll put them right on top of the procedure when you're viewing it. So if I tap on this button, I can see any of the Nodems that might apply to this specific procedure that I'm looking at. That's a really quick way to very quickly just jog your memory on what Nodems are out for the procedure you're looking at. Lots of other features that are available on the plates view. One of them is annotations. So I can tap this pencil button up at the top of the screen, and I can make little notes, highlight different aspects of the procedure, mark it up how I want. You can do this in documents, you can do this in plates. You can actually annotate directly on top of like VFR charts, IFR charts on the map view as well. Anywhere you see that pencil, that means you can annotate this thing. Another button up in the top right there is this little box with an arrow coming out of it. Anywhere you see that menu in the application, and you'll see it in a variety of different places. It means this thing you're looking at, you can take it and you can put it somewhere else. You can visualize it in a different way, or you can send it somewhere. In this case, if I tap on it when I'm looking at a procedure, I have two options. I can send it to the map, or I can print it out. If I send it to the map, because it's a georeferenced procedure, and because in this case I'm a Pro Plus subscriber, it's actually going to go back to the map view, and it's going to visualize it right on top of whatever chart I've selected. So this is really powerful because you can set up the map with the chart that you want, whether it's an IFR chart, VFR chart, aeronautical chart. And then you can set up a bunch of layers that you want, right? Radar or turbulence, whatever. And then you can plan your route. And then you can put the actual procedure on there too. So you can stack up all these different layers of situational awareness and view them all in one space in context. It's a really powerful concept, and something that I think is really, really helpful, especially for folks who are flying IFR. Next view I'd like to talk about is documents. So documents view is one to the right of plates at the bottom of the screen. When you open up documents for the first time, it will look like this. You'll notice there's a big left-hand column here. This column is what we call the documents catalog. And you can think of this as a way to browse documents that are available to you, as well as create binders to organize your documents. So you'll notice there's an add binder button here. You can create binders just like we created binders for plates. And then you can add any documents to them that you have imported yourself or that are available to you. Might probably look different than mine right now. The amount of document providers that are available to you depends on your subscription level and the geographic region that you're subscribed to. If you're a US basic plus subscriber, you're going to have like FAA and ForeFlight. If you're a Jeppesen subscriber, you'll get the Jeppesen option, that sort of thing. But these are all sources of documents, right? So everything you'd expect to find on, for example, the FAA website, like the airplane flying handbook, the pilot's handbook of aeronautical knowledge, that sort of thing. Those are all built in. You can just go into the FAA section and download them and have them with you. When you tap on a section, in this case, I'm a Jeppesen subscriber, so I have access to all of the Jeppesen Airway manuals and all the documents that they provide. No matter what chart or document provider you're looking at, you can tap the download button next to a document and they will download, and you'll get a little thumbnail and a little green check mark that they are downloaded. And whenever a new document comes out, they will be downloaded automatically, which is really handy. And again, you can import your own documents as well. You can email them to the device or airdrop them to the device, or you can even connect a Dropbox account or an Amazon account and upload your own documents to your own drive as well, and they'll show up in the app. So I put my my POH on there. Sometimes I fly into some airports that have some just local procedures. So I literally scan the local procedure at the FBO and I just put it in my EFB, so I have it with me. Lots of different options for keeping your own documents here. Next section I'd like to talk about is weather imagery. This is the Imagery tab. It's one to the right of documents along the bottom of the screen. When I'm on the Imagery tab, I see a column on the left. This lets me browse categories of imagery. Right now I'm looking at USA, but I can actually back up one level and I can browse imagery from lots of different regions all over the world. When you tap on a specific category you're interested in, you'll see all of the different imagery that's applicable to that category, and you can tap on it and open it up in full screen. So there's a tremendous amount of stuff in here. Tons of really useful weather imagery you'd expect to find on aviationweather.gov or a variety of other weather and aviation related websites, and we've sort of consolidated it all into one place in the application. ForeFlight also allows you to file and get weather briefings for VFR and IFR flight plans. And we can do that under the Flights tab here. So when I tap on Flights, which is one to the right of imagery along the bottom, I get this view. It's all the flights that I have planned in the past. And if you haven't planned any here, then this will just be blank, and you can create a new one by tapping the plus button at the top of the screen. When you create a flight, in the right-hand side, you'll see a form. And there's a bunch of information here. A lot of it is the same information we filled out on the maps view when we were planning our route. So for example, departure and destination, you can enter those there. Aircraft and the performance information for that aircraft, you can enter it here. You can plan out your route using waypoints under the route field here. You can use a feature we call Route Advisor, available view as well as on the flight view here. This actually allows you to look at recently ATC cleared routes between the departure and destination, so you can see what routes other pilots are getting cleared for between those airports. You can see what altitude they filed for, how frequently that specific route has been filed and cleared, what types of aircraft are normally filing that route. And then on the right-hand side, those times and fuel burns, those are actually relevant to your aircraft. So that's an estimate of how much time and how much fuel you would burn if you were to fly that route in your currently selected aircraft. There's one option up at the top. It's called the recommended route. And the recommended route is the best balance of time and fuel efficiency. This is available to Performance Plus customers. Basically, we use the ForeFlight planning engine. We look at the performance data in your aircraft. We look at the current weather, winds aloft, and things like that. And we plan out the best route laterally and vertically for you to get from A to B. And that's available to performance customers. So you can either enter the route manually or select it from that route advisor list, and it's entered here. I can scroll down, and there's a lot more information that's available here in this view. You can add people and cargo, set up your payload. You can set up specific fuel policies, modify your start fuel, your landing fuel. You can check your weights, make sure you're within all of your applicable weight limits for the flight. And at the bottom, you'll notice that I have not filed this flight. It says not filed, so I can now file it. So I'll tap proceed to file, and ForeFlight fills out an ICAO flight plan form for me. And I can scroll through this form, and again, it pre-fills all the information, so you shouldn't have to do anything here. You can always modify this at this point if you wish to tweak something just before you file. And then you can tap that blue file button, and off it goes to the air traffic control system. If it is an IFR flight plan, it goes off to air traffic control. If it is a VFR flight plan, it goes off to whoever controls VFR flight plans in whatever area you're flying. So for example, in the US, that would be flight service. At the top of the screen, you'll notice this button again, this little box with the arrow coming out of it. This is the send to menu. You can tap on this button, and you can then send this flight you just planned and filed. You can send it to the map, and you can do the reverse too. So if you're planning a flight on the map, you don't have to come into flights and create a brand new flight and fill it all out again. You can just tap on that send to menu, send to flights. It copies it into the flights view, or vice versa. You can plan here on the flights view, tap the send to button, send to maps, sends it to the map view. That's a quick way to move that route information between different views. The next view I'd like to talk about is Scratchpad. This allows you to take notes. I think taking notes is a big part of flying. We want to basically get rid of paper, right? So we're trying to build a really great note-taking feature in the application that's with you all the time. And we call that Scratchpads. And that's one to the right of flights along the bottom of the screen. When you open it up, it looks like this. It should look familiar, right? It looks kind of like the plates view. If you want to create a new Scratchpad, you can tap the new Scratchpad button, and you can create as many as you like. And when you tap on new Scratchpad, you get a template. So draw is the most basic option. That's just a blank screen that you can draw with a stylus or with your finger. Type allows you to take notes with your keyboard. Grid is the same as draw, but it just gives you a nice grid background, like grid paper. You can enter your clearance really easily using the craft. You can enter a PIREP really easily using the PIREP template. And one of my favorites is the ATIS template. If I use that as a template, I have a bunch of different areas here where I can very quickly jot down an ATIS like this. Just makes it a little bit easier and standardizes the format that you're writing it in. Okay, next section is downloads. And if you're new to ForeFlight, I would say this is probably the most important section of the presentation because it's really, really important that you've downloaded all the information you need for your flight onto your ForeFlight application before you go flying, because it is very unlikely you will be able to get an internet connection while airborne. Downloads is how we download all the relevant charts to our application before we fly. The downloads view is in the more menu. So remember that more menu, it's this option here on the right, and it brings out this little slide in menu. Up at the top is a downloads button. And when I tap on downloads button, I get this view. There's two sections here. The top section is download settings. So this is the areas that you want ForeFlight to download information for. And then below that is all of the current status of your downloads. So what has been downloaded. So let's say we wanted to go on a trip in the United States. So I would tap on United States and I get a new menu. And there's two sections. The first section is types of data. So this is how you tell ForeFlight, these are the types of things that I want you to download into the application for my flight. So if you're flying just VFR, maybe you'll turn on VFR charts and taxi diagrams. If you're flying IFR, maybe you'll turn on IFR low charts, IFR high charts, terminal procedures, that sort of thing. So turn on the types of data you want, and then underneath that, the areas you want it for. Now, in the United States, it's divided by state, obviously. In Canada, it's divided by province. Different areas, different subscription regions are divided differently. But just make sure you turn on the area you want it for. And ForeFlight gives you a little preview of how much space each of those regions will take up based on the type of data you've turned on. So we've turned on the types of data we want, the areas we want it for. We'll go back. And at the bottom of the screen, we'll tap the big blue download button. And ForeFlight will download all that information to your device. Now, let's say I'm planning a longer flight. Maybe it's a long cross-country flight, cuts through many states. We recognize that it's probably a bit of a hassle to think, okay, what are all these states that I'm flying through? I got to go through the list and figure out all these different states that I need. We built a feature, it's called Pack. And the idea behind Pack is it analyzes the route. And based on the data you have selected, VFR charts, IFR charts, whatever, if there are any of those types of charts that aren't currently downloaded, Pack will prompt you to download them automatically, specifically for this route. This is the Pack button. It looks like a little suitcase. You can see in this case, it has a little red bubble on it. That's telling me that there is data available that I don't have on my device right now for the route that I've planned. So I'll tap on that and view of the area that it is packing for. And any of the charts or weather or fuel prices, even 3D imagery, if I'm a Performance Plus customer, that intersects this 25 nautical mile corridor along my route, it will prompt me to download those. And with one tap, I can tap the Pack button and it will start downloading them all for my specific trip that I've planned. So there's a whole lot more in ForeFlight that we didn't have a chance to get to today. We really take this idea of integrated flight app to the extreme. There's a tremendous amount of functionality built in. For example, there's a full synthetic vision feature built in, worldwide 3D terrain, obstacles, even traffic will show up in 3D, which is really neat. Weight and balance is built in. So we talked a little bit about in the flights view, you can check all of your weights, but you can look at a full weight and balance envelope here, and you can drag and drop people and cargo between different stations and see how that affects your takeoff and landing within your CG envelope in real time. It's very visual, very interactive. It's really cool. There's also a logbook built in. It makes total sense to have a logbook in ForeFlight because you have it with you when you're flying, and it knows where you are, knows what you're doing, and so it can track how long you flew, how many takeoffs and landings you did, where you landed at, that sort of thing. And it can automatically prompt you to log these entries on your device. And this logbook data is all backed up. It's synchronized automatically to the ForeFlight servers, and you can download it at any time you want in an Excel spreadsheet format. And it synchronizes across all of your ForeFlight devices as well. There's a checklist built in. You can create your own checklists or use one of the many, many different templates we have for most common aircraft. You can browse normal, abnormal, and emergency checklists, check things off. ForeFlight can actually run through checklists for you automatically, so it can do sort of a challenge response using the audio features of the iPad. You can see that speak button at the bottom there. It can actually run through these checklists for you, and you can accomplish the checklist items as it's speaking them to you. Really nice safety feature is called Glide Advisor. This is a real-time depiction of your available gliding distance in the event of an engine out emergency based on your current GPS altitude and based on the current. So this is showing you in this example how far I would be able to glide based on my current GPS altitude if I lost an engine at this point. You'll notice on the right side of that Glide Advisor, that green ring, it's pretty jagged. It takes into account terrain, rising terrain as well. And it's real time, so you'll see it morph and change as you're flying. It'll bend around terrain and things like that. Really nice feature to have, especially if you're flying in areas of terrain or water. Another great feature is Procedure Advisor. This is a way to visualize any approach, any arrival, any departure into and out of any airport. It'll even visualize traffic pattern procedures, which can be a useful teaching tool on the ground when you're trying to visualize how you might enter a specific pattern. This is a really great visual way to kind of understand how the procedures for an airport are laid out and which one is most relevant to you based on your direction of flight. We recently launched internet traffic, so you've been able to see traffic in real time over ADS-B in flight, if you have an ADS-B in solution. It's now available over the internet subscribers as well. So, you know, if you're sitting at home and just wanted to see who's flying around the pattern right now, you can open up internet traffic and see that. It's nice to see too, you know, in a pre-flight scenario, see maybe what runways are in use or what the arrivals look like, that sort of thing. And that's all real-time information that's powered by FlightAware. All the charts we've been looking at so far are published charts, right? FAA charts, Jeppesen charts, Nav Canada charts. You can import your own charts. So if you're flying in an area of the world that does not have published charts, you can import your own. You can import your own procedures as well, your own layers. So you can create polygons, different shapes, points, visualize those on the map. That's really useful for scenarios where you're doing maybe search and rescue or pipeline surveys. Saw a customer on Twitter who does cherry drying in a helicopter, and she had mapped out all the cherry fields using this so that she can very quickly navigate between them, which I thought was really cool. In order to import your own custom content, it's very simple. You can use email, iTunes, AirDrop, or even just a direct link you find online. You can find more information on how to import custom content on ForeFlight.com. You know, we mentioned ForeFlight tracks your flights for you, and you can visualize and replay that flight. You can replay it in 2D like this, or you can get a profile view in a top-down view as well. If you have an AHRS unit, like a Stratus or a Sentry attached, you can visualize pitch and bank over time as well. Or if you're a customer, you can visualize that flight in 3D as well, which is really, really cool experience. Most of these features we were talking about, most of these planning and features, these are available online too. So if you prefer to do your flight planning on a larger screen with maybe a mouse and keyboard, ForeFlight Web, you just log in at ForeFlight.com. It's available to all subscribers, and you can do that planning there. And everything you do there will synchronize automatically to your iPad. And then once you get out to your airplane, if you have a Garmin cockpit or a Dynon or Aspen or Avidyne cockpit, you can wirelessly transfer the plan to your panel from ForeFlight. I've included Microsoft Flight Simulator here too. You can actually connect ForeFlight to your flight simulator and fly along at home, and ForeFlight will think it's flying along with you in your simulated aircraft. More information on how to do all of these things at foreflight.com/connect. So that concludes our ForeFlight fundamentals presentation. Lots of ways to learn more about ForeFlight. Check out the pilot's guide. It's built into the documents tab. We're talking about that catalog with the different providers. If you tap on the ForeFlight option, the documents view will actually give you the pilot's guide, so you can have the manual with you when you fly. ForeFlight.com/videos. There's going to be 30-minute courses, 1-hour courses, 5-minute little tips on every feature in the application. That's free to everyone. ForeFlight.com/EAA. We have a lot more webinars this week celebrating the spirit of aviation with the EAA, and you can check out the full schedule there. You can always stay up to date on the latest features in ForeFlight, and there are always new features. We try to release a major new update every month, and that's at blog.foreflight.com, or you can sign up for the newsletter to get that information in your inbox. You can do that on our website. And then that pilot support team, those are all expert pilots, ForeFlight experts as well. They're available 24/7 over email. Send them an email, team@foreflight.com. So Sam, I'm going to bring Sam on, and Sam, have we gotten any questions throughout the webinar?
Hey, Ryan. Yes, we have. We've gotten just a few questions, and if anyone is still holding out on submitting their question, feel free to do it now, because this is going to end up being a pretty short question and answer session if we don't get some additional ones. So we'll go ahead and kick it off with this first one. It's a question about buying subscriptions. The question is, if I purchase Basic Plus, then I upgrade to Pro Plus for the additional, or let me start over. If I purchase Basic Plus, can I then upgrade to Pro Plus for the additional $100, or do I need to buy a new plan? So how does that work when you want to upgrade your subscription after buying it?
Yeah, great question. So let's say you purchase a subscription and then you decide that maybe you want a feature in a higher level subscription. All you need to do is go to foreflight.com, log in, go to your account, or you can go directly to foreflight.com/buy and enter your email address. Select the new subscription that you want. and we will credit you the difference. So we'll prorate your subscription minus what you've already paid. And your subscription date will simply renew 1 year from the day that you made a change, the day that you upgraded. So you're not going to be paying, for example, double for a subscription that you bought and then upgraded. We're going to credit you whatever the difference is. We'll prorate the account.
Yeah, really important to note that that only works if you buy through our website. So if you just go to within ForeFlight, within the app, and you purchase from there, then you don't get that credit. So make sure you go to foreflight.com/buy to do all of your transactions with us.
Yep.
Next up, how do I know that the information, for example, regarding runways is correct and represents the actual situation?
The information for runways, meaning like the information in the airport view, or like the information that is rendered on the chart. I'll give you a couple different answers there, depending on kind of where the question was coming from. So all of the information that you see in ForeFlight, in the airport view, on the map, that sort of thing, that is sourced from what are called AIPs. AIPs are the official government sources of aeronautical data. The FAA publishes them, NAV Canada publishes them, different governments publish them. The AIPs are then brought into the Jeppesen Aeronautical Database, and that's the aeronautical database that powers all of ForeFlight. And the nice thing about going through the Jeppesen database is that that is all quality assured. So for example, Jeppesen, as well as ForeFlight, have QA analysts that look at any new data that comes into the system from these government AIPs. And they actually fix problems with this data sometimes. Sometimes something is mispublished. They let the government chart provider know there's an issue here. The chart provider fixes it, and then it goes out into the next data cycle. And the data cycles normally come out every 28 days. So the information that's in ForeFlight is coming directly from government sources and directly from Jeppesen. And it also goes through another level of quality assurance testing by us and by Jeppesen as well.
All right, next up. I know about using the letter D in the search box plus the airport identifier as a direct to function, but have you ever thought about just adding a direct to button? So Ryan, do we have a direct to button like that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So for those who aren't familiar, that search functionality we're talking about on the map, there's a couple different shortcuts you can use in there. If you type the letter D and then the space bar and then a waypoint name or an airport ICAO code, it'll plot a route from your current GPS position direct to that waypoint. There is no dedicated direct to button. However, you can tap on any point on the map. Anything you see in ForeFlight on the map, you can tap on direct to from the menu that's presented once you tap on it. So there's no like top level direct to button, but if you tap on a thing you see on the map, then you can tap direct to on that thing and go direct to it.
Next question. Do you have airport reviews and route suggestions, e.g. great airport restaurants, sightseeing, cheap fuel, maybe even a pilot's review integration? What do we have that's similar to that?
Yeah, it's a great question. So on the airports view, we were talking about the FBOs button, right? That's in the top right-hand corner of the FBO, of the airport view. When you tap on FBOs and you go into a specific FBO that you're looking at, there is a comment section there. So you can leave a review and talk about what your experience was like at any of the businesses on the airport. In terms of like an overall review of the airport, that's not something that currently exists, but it's a great idea. I'll take that back to the team. But that's definitely the closest thing we have right now. Definitely check out the FBO's view and the comments on different businesses to see what other ForeFlight customers have experienced there.
All right. Does the logbook have, or will it be upgraded in the future to easily sort and calculate by type of flight, like night flight, IFR, VFR, etc., or type of aircraft?
Yeah, so the way to do that today, using those, is to go into the reports section. So when you go into the logbook section and go to the reports option in the menu, you can generate a variety of different types of reports that basically scan through all the data and generate that sort of information. There is a general report in there that will give you time by type, nighttime, flying, instrument flying, that sort of thing. That's the easiest way to do it today. We're looking at improving our logbook functionality over time as well. So that's making those sort of calculations a little bit easier, totally understood in that feedback, and I'll take that back to the team. But check out the report section. It's pretty useful.
All right, next up, how many devices can I use with the ForeFlight software?
Yeah, so you can use ForeFlight on 3 devices. You can use it on 2 iPads and an iPhone, or 2 iPhones and an iPad. Can you sanity check me on that, Sam? Is that correct?
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah.
You can have 3 devices, but it can't be 3 of the exact same device. It can be 2
Yeah,
and
so,
1. Either way.
yeah, so we recognize that it's great to have a backup, right? And we also recognize that it's really useful to be able ForeFlight on your iPhone because it's just a quick way to pull it out of your pocket and check the weather. And so every ForeFlight customer can use it on 2 iPads and 1 iPhone, or 2 iPhones and 1 iPad simultaneously. And all the things you do on any of those devices synchronize to all the other devices. So if you add an aircraft, or plan a flight, or get a weather briefing, or create a plate, add a plate to a binder, that sort of thing, all that information will synchronize across all the devices.
All right, next up, will this webinar repeat this week? I'll go ahead and answer that and say, yes, it will. All of the webinars will repeat at least once or twice, and you can go to foreflight.com/EAA to see the full schedule of events. So make sure you go there, and if you miss part of this webinar, you can register for the next one, and then you'll be able to see the full thing. So next question for Ryan, does the basic plan allow a tie-in to Microsoft Simulator?
Yeah,
and maybe
so
we can also address our other simulator integrations there.
Yeah, so first off, I'll mention we have a flight simulator specific webinar this week. Do you know what day it is, Sam?
Yeah, I want to say it's Wednesday afternoon.
Yeah, you can register for it on foreflight.com/EAA. It's going to be all about using ForeFlight with simulators. But to give the short answer to the question, ForeFlight can connect to a simulator regardless of your subscription type. So all customers can connect. It works out of the box with Lockheed Martin's Prepared software. It also works out of the box with X-Plane, as well as Infinite mobile product for iOS and Android. Nothing to announce yet in regards to the new version of Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020, but it does work with older versions. There's a couple third-party tools that allow you to convert it to those. You can find out more information about that at foreflight.com/connect. We have some information on flight simulators there. Or again, check out our upcoming simulator webinar on foreflight.com/EAA. We go really in depth in that webinar.
All right, next up. When flying, my map never centers up for me. I have to continually pull the map with my finger. Is there a way to fix this?
Oh yeah, so ForeFlight, the ForeFlight map will work in 2 ways. It will work in sort of just a manual mode where you kind of have to drag around to keep it centered on your position. And that's useful, for example, for planning or for panning off somewhere off route to see something. In order to keep it centered around your own ship, though, there's a GPS button in the top right-hand corner of the screen. It looks like a little GPS icon on the maps view. When you tap on that button, the map will stay centered and locked on your current GPS position unless you interact with the map again. So if you tap the GPS button, it centers your own ship, you're flying around, it's staying centered, and then you pan off somewhere, you would need to tap the GPS button again to lock it back on so that it stays centered from that point forward. I also want to point out that there's a couple different ways to center the own ship position. If you go into the settings menu for the map, so that's the little settings cog. It's in the top left-hand corner of the map view. It is just to the right of the layer selector we were talking about. There's a track up centering option there. So you can track up you can keep your own ship locked in the center, tracking up, or you can track up forward, which keeps the own ship locked sort of towards in the bottom 1/3 of the screen, so you can see a little bit more of what's ahead of you, or you can track north up as well. But to keep it locked, so you don't have to keep panning around to keep your own ship on the screen, just make sure that that GPS button in the top right-hand corner is blue. That means it's locked on.
All right, we're going to run through 4 or 5 more here before we call it quits. Next up, my iPad often overheats in the summer. Any suggestions?
Yeah, so the iPad, as great of a device as it is, and as much as it has transformed so many industries, aviation included, at the end of the day, it is glass and metal, right? It is prone to overheating, particularly in sunlight. The number one thing you can do to prevent your iPad from overheating is to keep it out of direct sunlight. Any iOS device in direct sunlight is going to get hot real quick. So try to keep it out of sunlight if you can. Think about where you're mounting it. Maybe move it if the sun is moving, etc. The other thing that increases the heat of the device and also increases the degradation of the battery life is brightness. So if you're able to turn brightness down a little bit, that's going to help keep it a little bit cooler as well. There are some third-party options out there that are actual iPad cases that have like integrated cooling with cooling fans. I can't speak to their how effective they are. I haven't used them myself, but I believe they're sold by, there's a couple on sporties.com. But yeah, number one tip is just try to keep it out of direct sunlight as much as possible.
Right, next up. Will ForeFlight advise me of altitudes to avoid to stay out of class Bravo while creating a flight plan, or am I left to just review the chart?
ForeFlight has a variety of different types of alerts. There are in-flight alerts for example, TFRs, if you're approaching a TFR, or if you're approaching another traffic target. There are not currently airspace alerts in flight. When it comes to a planning feature, the best way to make sure that you're avoiding at whatever class B you want is obviously to reference the chart, but also you check out that profile view. If you go into the flight plan window that we were planning a flight in and tap on profile, this will show you your track from a side perspective, and you can see where you need to be to clear certain airspace shelves or even clear terrain and obstacles as well. So definitely reference the chart for that and check out the profile view.
Okay, two questions about Sentry here. One is, I'm a brand new user and also have the Sentry portable ADS-B receiver. Will that provide me with live in-flight weather in Europe?
The Sentry receiver supports dual band ADS-BN weather and traffic. This means that if you are anywhere where another aircraft has ADS-B out and you're within reception range, you will see that traffic target through the Sentry. When it comes to weather, the weather is broadcast over what's called FBO. It's a sort of a sub version of the ADS-B spec. And the FBO network is specific to the United States. There is not another country that has rolled out an ADS-B weather network like the United States, at least not yet. There have been lots of thoughts, I think, by a variety of different governments on doing just that. So the short answer to the question is no, you will not get in-flight weather over Sentry in Europe. However, you will get it in the United States. And if wherever you fly in Europe, if that area decides to roll out FBO on the same frequency that the United States uses, then by all means, it should support that as well. And we would look into supporting that in Europe. But it really depends on those governments, getting it together and deciding to roll that out.
So next question is, I just ordered Sentry to replace my Stratix, and that's Stratix with the X at the end, not Stratus. How will firmware updates be communicated?
Yeah, so I think one of the best things about Sentry is how well integrated it is into ForeFlight Mobile. So when you turn your Sentry on, it broadcasts a Wi-Fi signal, and you connect to that Wi-Fi signal on your iPad, and that's how the two devices communicate. When you open it, once you've connected to the Sentry, the very first time, it automatically detects that you're connected to Sentry, and it'll give you a little menu, and it'll ask you to tell it a little bit about where you're mounting the Sentry in your aircraft so that you can get accurate pitch and bank information. This menu that pops up is also going to prompt you to update the firmware. Whenever there's a firmware update for Sentry, that firmware update is shipped in the latest version of ForeFlight Mobile. That's how you update. So in ForeFlight, at any time when you're connected to Sentry, you can go into that More menu at the bottom right-hand corner of the screen, and then there's a Devices section, and you can tap on Devices. And if you're connected to Sentry, you'll see Sentry listed in that menu, and you can tap on it. And if there is a newer firmware version available that's not yet installed, it'll prompt you to update it, and it takes just a few seconds.
All right, last question. I may have misunderstood, but I thought Ryan showed a feature that showed the arrival procedures on the map, so you could tell what procedure would apply to your direction of approaching the airport. Where is that available?
Yeah, that's a feature that's called Procedure Advisor. It's probably my all-time favorite feature in ForeFlight. It visualizes arrivals, departures, approaches, and even VFR traffic patterns. You can access the Procedure Advisor on the Maps tab where we were planning the flight. When you open up the flight plan drawer, up in the top right-hand corner of the flight plan drawer, there's a button that says Procedure. And this is how you can visualize procedures and then optionally add them to your route.
Yeah, and one of the great things about that feature also is that if the procedure you happen to select has a chart that is georeferenced, which would be most approach procedures, and if you have Jeppesen charts, it would also be many of the SIDS and stars, then when you select that procedure, it'll just automatically overlay the chart within the Procedure Advisor window. So it's a great way to both see the route contained within that procedure, and yet also view the chart as well if it's georeferenced. So we're going to go ahead and call it there. Thank you so much, everyone, for attending. Like we said, please go to foreflight.com/EAA to see all of the other webinars we're having this week. We'll be doing at least 2 every day. And so there's plenty more webinars to watch. Go to that webpage to register. If you end up missing one, we will also put recorded versions of these webinars on that page, so you can go back and watch them there. And obviously go to any of those other support resources shown on your screen right now if you need help with anything. Thanks again, and we'll see you on the next webinar.